The first scream wasn't human. It tore through the woods like steel dragged against stone, vibrating through the marrow of Ethan's bones. He froze, his breath fogging in the black air, the dim flashlight beam trembling across the underbrush. Behind him, Kelly whispered his name, voice already breaking. They shouldn't have gone this far. Everyone in town said the ruins were cursed. The Grange, a rotting farmhouse where 3 families had disappeared, their blood staining the walls in patterns no one could explain. But they had dared each other, foolish and drunk on the cheap liquor sloshing in Ethan's gut. Now, all 4 of them stood at the edge of the house, watching the dark windows breathe. The door groaned open without a touch. Inside, the smell hit first, copper and rot so thick Ethan gagged. The beam of his flashlight cut through dust, glinting off something dark smeared along the hallway wallpaper. Not paint, not old, wet. "Don't touch it," Kelly hissed, grabbing Mark's arm as he leaned in. But Mark grinned, nerves twisting his smile. "It's just old blood. Place is a crime scene, right?" The wall shifted under his palm. No one moved, not even to breathe. Slowly, with a sickening peel, the wallpaper slewed off in damp chunks, curling outward as though the house itself were shedding skin. Beneath it was flesh. Pale, veined human flesh stretched over the wall like canvas. Samantha screamed, stumbling back. The house groaned, deep in its beams, and the floor under them shuddered. Something crawled in the ceiling above, fast, jointed, scraping claws dragging through the plaster. The lights went out. When Ethan's flashlight flicked back on, Mark was gone. Only his shoes remained, toppled neatly in the hall, their laces still tied. Blood led away from them in 2 perfect streaks, as if he'd been dragged upright, toes skimming the wood. They followed, they couldn't help it. At the end of the hall, the kitchen door yawned wide. Inside, their beams caught something dangling from the rafters. Mark, or what was left. His torso had been split from groin to sternum, his organs plucked out and arranged neatly on the counter below, his liver pulsing, still twitching as though refusing to die. His eyes had been removed, sockets black voids, and sewn into his chest cavity where his heart should have been. Kelly vomited, the sound wet and sharp in the silence. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, a voice rasped. "You shouldn't have come." The ceiling collapsed. Something dropped down, a thing with too many arms, elbows bending wrong, its body stitched from pieces of the missing. Mark's jaw hung crookedly from its shoulder. Samantha screamed as it scuttled toward her, impossibly fast. Ethan grabbed her hand, but the creature was already on her. Claws like meat hooks sank into her ribs, yanking her apart in one clean, wet tear. She came apart like paper soaked in rain. Her head hit the tiles, eyes wide, mouth still open mid-scream. Kelly shrieked, pulling Ethan toward the back door. They sprinted through the house, walls shifting like lungs, every step accompanied by that sound. The wet stretch of skin, the pulse of something alive beneath the wood. The door slammed shut in their faces. Kelly's nails tore at the knob. Behind them, the thing clicked and gurgled, dragging Samantha's twitching remains along the floor like a doll. It whispered with 100 mouths sewn into its skin. Ethan lifted the flashlight, his only weapon, and smashed it into the door's window. Glass shattered. He shoved Kelly through first, cutting her legs as she scrambled into the yard. The creature lunged. Ethan felt claws pierce his back, tearing through muscle, sliding between ribs. Hot blood filled his throat. He shoved Kelly forward, his last strength spent in one push. She screamed his name as she tumbled into the night. Ethan never made it out. The last thing he saw, before the creature dragged him into the breathing dark, was Kelly running, barefoot, bleeding into the trees. The last thing he felt was the house closing around him, swallowing him whole. And the last thing he heard was the voice, inside his head now, not the walls. "You're part of us now." Kelly ran blindly through the trees, each footstep smashing branches, her lungs burning, the night air tasting of iron and rot. Behind her, the house seemed to breathe, the shadows crawling at the edges of her vision. Something followed, dragging itself through the underbrush with unnatural speed, snapping small trees like twigs. She stumbled into a clearing and saw the faint glow of a road in the distance. Salvation, or so she thought. Her legs were raw, scraped from brambles and stones. A deep, wet gurgle echoed from behind. Then she saw it, half in moonlight, half in shadow. Ethan, or what used to be him. His body twisted in angles no human could survive, limbs bent backward, eyes sewn into the side of his neck. His mouth hung open in a silent scream, saliva dripping to the ground. Yet he moved. He hobbled toward her with jerky, convulsing steps, each one leaving a smear of blood. Kelly's stomach roiled and she turned, sprinting toward the road. The thing from the house, its voice now 1,000 voices in one, echoed through the forest. "You cannot leave. Not yet, we're not finished." Branches clawed at her face as she ran. Her hands tore at the bark of a tree to pull herself up as the forest floor seemed to rise and twist, roots forming grasping hands. She realized with a sickening certainty, the house had followed her. The entity wasn't confined to wood and nails. It was everywhere the house's shadow fell. She tripped, landing in a shallow ditch. Her fingers scraped over something wet. Looking down, she realized it was a hand, Mark's severed hand, the skin slick and cold, nails bitten down to stubs. Clutched in it, a twisted scrap of flesh stitched into a crude smile like a grim warning. A shadow lunged from the trees. She scrambled backward, the thing's multiple limbs knocking her against a tree trunk. Pain shot through her ribs. She tried to scream, but the air was sucked out, replaced by the suffocating pulse of the house's hunger. Desperation sharpened her senses. She remembered the flashlight in her pocket, her only weapon. Fumbling, she flicked it on. The beam struck the shadow directly. It shrieked something between a human cry and the tearing of paper. Limbs flailed, then recoiled, retreating just enough for her to crawl from the ditch. But there was no escape. Every path led back to the clearing. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig meant it was closing in, hunger gnawing at her like teeth behind her skull. In the distance, she saw the faint glow of a small cabin. A light burned inside, too perfect, too warm. Kelly didn't think she ran. The cabin door opened slowly. A figure stood there, silhouetted by lamplight. Relief surged until it grinned. Its face was a patchwork of skin from everyone she knew, stitched together grotesquely. "You're home now," it whispered, and the door slammed shut behind her. Kelly stumbled into the cabin, slamming the door behind her. The lock clicked, but it did little to ease her panic. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every floorboard groaned under invisible weight. The walls were lined with mirrors, not ordinary mirrors. Each reflected something wrong. Her body twisted, cracked at the joints, her face sewn with pieces of her friend's features. Each reflection moved independently, reaching toward her with silent fingers. She backed into the far corner, eyes darting for anything she could use as a weapon. The only furniture was a table, stained dark, slick and shiny. On it lay items she recognized in a sick, twisted jumble. Mark's liver, still poolsing, Samantha's eyes rolling in a shallow bowl, Ethan's tongue coiled like a grotesque rope. They were arranged deliberately, like a macabre altar. A voice rasped from every corner at once, every voice she had ever known, alive and stitched into one horrible sound. "You can't run, not from us. We are your home now." The lights flickered. In the mirrors, her own reflection smiled without her permission, its mouth stretching impossibly wide. The thing in the doorway, the stitched-together figure, moved closer, limbs bending like wet noodles, dragging the remnants of her friends' bodies behind it. Each step left a trail of blood that crawled like worms, reaching toward her, grasping. Kelly grabbed a chair and swung it at the figure. The thing recoiled, but not in pain, it laughed, a wet, gurgling sound that filled the room. One of its arms shot out like a spear, skewering the chair, and the wood splintered under the pressure of its fingers. She ducked, rolling across the table, sending the bowl of eyes crashing to the floor. They blinked, crawling toward her like insects. Panic clawed her chest. She ran to the mirrors, smashing them with her fists, shattering them into jagged shards. The reflection screamed, twisting the room into impossible angles. For a moment, Kelly thought she saw a hole in reality, where the cabin walls had warped into some black, pulsing abyss. Then the stitched-together figure lunged. She screamed, grabbing a shard of mirror and slashing. The glass cut deep into its flesh, spraying a mix of blood and something thick, gray, and stringy like tendons mixed with ink. The thing shrieked, but it didn't stop. It only seemed to multiply, more limbs sprouting from its torso, eyes forming in its chest, mouths opening where none should be. Kelly stumbled backward, tripping over a bloodied chair leg. She felt hands, human, not stitched, grabbing at her ankles, trying to drag her into the floorboards. Screaming, she kicked and clawed her way to the front door. It was locked. She pounded on it, screaming, and the figure loomed over her. Then she remembered the keys in her pocket. Hands shaking, she fumbled, finally unlocking the door. She pushed with every ounce of strength she had left. The door burst open into the night. Cold air hit her face like a whip. She ran without looking back. The forest was alive. The shadows seemed thicker, denser than before, and the house's influence spread like rot. Every tree leaned toward her, roots clawing at her legs. Behind her, the stitched figure emerged from the darkness, dragging itself along with unnatural speed. Its voices merged into a single, wet scream. "You belong to us." Kelly sprinted until her lungs burned, until the trees thinned and the distant glow of the town's streetlights appeared. Relief surged, but it was short-lived. She could still hear it, the clicking of claws on pavement, the wet rasp of limbs stretching and tearing. She reached her car. The keys trembled in her hand. The stitched figure stopped at the edge of the forest, its head tilting unnaturally. Its chest opened, and inside she saw the faces of everyone she knew, stitched together, staring at her. It raised a crooked, dripping hand in a mock wave. She got in the car, slamming the door. The engine roared to life, tires spinning on gravel. She drove as fast as she could, but in the rearview mirror she saw it, crawling over the trees, over rooftops, over the pavement itself, still following. And then it smiled. Kelly realized the truth in a gut-chilling instant. She could never escape. The house, the creature, the stitched amalgam of the dead, it wasn't a place. It was a force, and it would follow her wherever she ran. The headlights caught movement in the distance, another car empty. She blinked. The stitched figure was in the driver's seat, grinning at her. It raised its hand, beckoning. Kelly screamed. The road ahead twisted impossibly, stretching like the interior of a nightmare. The shadows were alive, the night itself breathing, and somewhere behind her the voice whispered, "You'll be with us soon, forever." Weeks later, the town whispered again about the Grange. Another missing person, a lone girl seen driving erratically on the edge of the forest, screaming into the night. No one knew where she went, but locals swore her car sat abandoned on a quiet road, engine cold, doors locked from the inside. Inside the car, nothing seemed out of place until you looked closer. In the rearview mirror, stitched faces blinked at the empty seat beside hers. Mouths that had screamed, eyes that had pleaded, all twisted together in a grinning mosaic of death. And then, faintly, a whisper. "We're home now." From the forest, a shadow moved. Not a figure, but a presence, stretching, crawling, alive. It slithered along the roadside, following, patient, eternal. The stitched figure had learned to leave the cabin, to hunt beyond walls, and now it was free. Somewhere in the distance, another car approached. The headlights flickered over a lone figure in the road. She waved. A driver slowed. A hitchhiker, a lost girl. The shadow reached her first. It flowed over the road like smoke, tendrils slipping inside the car, inside the driver. The stitched faces twisted further, turning to grin at the newcomer. The girl's scream joined the chorus. And then the car, once empty and silent, drove itself back toward the Grange, headlights cutting through the fog like knives. Inside, the stitched creature whispered in hundreds of voices, welcoming a new passenger, never letting her go. The town, asleep, heard nothing. The road stayed empty, but those who walked near the edge of the woods sometimes swore they saw faces in the shadows, grinning, stitched together, watching, waiting. Some houses keep memories. Some houses eat lives. The Grange keeps you.